I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is good to see everyone on an off night, and so glad that so many of you could make it tonight. That way we won't be here until midnight next week with all the budget reports. A couple of things before we start our meeting. A couple of things for good news. First of all, we received an Efficiency Main rebate of $1,380 for the univentilators at Manchester. So that came through, and so that's helping to offset the cost of those univentilators. Great. Secondly, and I don't see Rick Hogan here, the Maranacook Community Middle School has been renewed as a spotlight school as a result of their site visit a couple of weeks ago that Gary went to. There's a letter in your packet, the full letter. They explain a lot more, went into much more detail as to the reasons for the renewal. So congratulations to the middle school, and we'll continue to hear good things. So now we have all four student representatives here, and it is time for the student representative reports. Who goes first? Can you turn on the microphones? You're on TV.
Press the button. There you go. Oh, that's not working. All right, you'll have to speak into his, okay?
All right. So today we started student-led conferences.
And the Alpine ski team has won most games, and others have so far been in the top 3. And 2 weeks ago, the girls and boys ski team won first place in Camden.
The Nordic ski team has not had very many races, but, well, they haven't had as many races as the Alpine ski team has. In their races, the kids have placed top 10, boys and girls.
And right now this month, high school transitioning is starting and is taking place with students choosing their classes and their electives and recommendations from their teachers.
In March, there's going to be a play. It's called Murder Cafe. It's a kind of a comedy play. And then there's also the Arts Night, which is March 4th. Students are going to be performing. There's going to be, after the performance, there's going to be a buffet and activities for the younger kids.
And then next week, Winter Carnival is coming up with Spirit Week. On Monday, kids will wear pajamas. Tuesday, which is grade color day, 8th grades wear blue, 7th graders wear green, and 6th graders wear purple. Wednesday is Hogwarts or superhero costume day. And Thursday is look-alike day, twinning with your friends. And Friday is Maranacook Black Bear Pride Day, wearing black and gold.
Right now you have snow for Winter Carnival.
Yes.
This weekend.
Which is great for sled racing.
This weekend, maybe rain, sleet, ice.
Oh.
However, if it were to right now, Winter Carnival would be perfect, I think.
It would.
Good luck with that, and have a lot of fun with it.
Thank you.
All right, so we had, for the high school, we had the Eurosphere dance on the 20th, and I believe we made about $900 profit off of that. We're busy finalizing the Winter Carnival, which is the first week after break, and that's a lot like what the middle schooler student reps were talking about. We sold shirts for that already, and we're about to order them. Next year class signups are happening. They already happened last week, and they should have been turned in this Monday. The carnation sales are also going on to, you can buy a carnation and send it to one of your best friends or significant other. The unified basketball teams kicked off on the 27th, and that's a lot of fun. The Alpine and Nordic KVACs were today. They're going to be Friday and Saturday. So that's starting up.
Basketball KVACs are next weekend. States for all sports are coming up in late February. The math team got 4th in their latest meet with the highest turnout in Marana Cook history for participation. Health Advisory is working on getting trainings for teachers about how to deal with students with anxiety and like what the protocol should be for that, how to handle it better. 2 public forum teams qualified for nationals, and biggest news yet, the cafeteria got tongs that were larger for more accessibility to the salad bar. So Student Senate's really getting stuff done this year. That's all though. That's all we have.
Sometimes it's those little things like the longer tongs that just make your day.
The freshman class sent out like a Google Docs polling survey to get it done. It's like a large effort.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for your reports. If you'd like to leave, you're free to leave, unless you would really like to stay for the rest of the meeting. Okay, any additions or adjustments to the agenda?
No, I believe it says that Ron Smith will not be speaking tonight, so he's coming on March 7th, the auditor.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes for January 24th, 2018.
Any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor? Abstentions? Against? Okay. You're a little lonely over there. Okay. Acceptance of donations.
Make a motion that we accept the donations from UMA, Kents Hill School, and Anonymous, as listed on page 5C.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting those donations? All right, unanimous. Jeremy, did you vote on that? Sorry. You support, okay. Thank you. Just checking.
Make a motion that we accept the interim contract teacher, Darcy Adams, high school Spanish.
Anything you'd like to tell us about this?
She is taking Kelly Fry's place while she's on a sick leave.
Any other questions for Donna? All those in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Make a motion that we accept the overnight trip request for MCHS.
Oh, you know what? That has been canceled since it was to happen today. I talked to Jordan DeMillo, and he said that they would cancel it until another time when they could get board approval before they went.
Okay. I thought that was a little, even if we'd done it last night, so, okay. Yes, Wendy?
Betty, we went pretty fast in the beginning for the additions. We went pretty fast in the beginning past citizens' comments into the additions and adjustments to the agenda board, but
I skipped right over that.
I
didn't mean to do that.
So I was wondering if I could bring up something that I know I would like to discuss. I received some letters today from teachers. Yesterday there was a workshop held during the snowstorm yesterday, and a lot of teachers were very upset and felt that the ride home was very dangerous. And I want to know, what is the policy for this, Donna, And do we need to make amendments to the policy so something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, past practice has been that, and it happened way before I got here, that the teachers have always gone home with the students if there's an early release. Yesterday's early release was pre-planned, and we had a workshop in the afternoon. What we do with central office is we go by what the state, and when the state cancels, then we cancel. So yesterday, I was watching the weather all day, and at 12:30, when we started the workshop, it still was not snowing. We finished about 2:30. I went back to central office, and they had said that the state was canceling at 3 o'clock, and at that point, we called everyone and said, go now. It was pointless to stay for an extra half hour, but central office people stayed. You stayed till?
It was after 3.
3. I left it a little bit before 3, and I travel all back roads, and I went slow, but I didn't have any trouble, so. Typically, central office stays, even if school gets out and the teachers go home, central office stays until 4:30 unless the state closes. So we went by that, and
But that's dangerous, too. The driving conditions were not very good, and there were a lot of people, I think, who felt disrespected a little bit, that they weren't able to leave, and they felt very fearful and in danger to drive home. And I would rather we err on the side of caution and allow the teachers and the administrators, yourself as well. I mean, you both drove home in dangerous weather.
no, I didn't feel that it was dangerous when I drove home, but.
But others might disagree.
And we were just going with past practice, and again, I don't know how long it's been practiced in central office, but that's what we've gone by for years. And many times we've stayed, the students have gone home, and central office has worked till 4:30, and then we clear off our cars and go home, so.
Well, I just think that maybe it might be prudent to look at the policy and perhaps update it. I would feel better for everybody if we really make the effort to look out for our teachers. And there are some people who aren't going to be as confident as others driving in the snow. And some of those back roads are horrible. And I think Gary told me that in Wayne, there's a snowplow that comes through at 3 a.m. and then again at 3 p.m. And that's about it. So.
Well, when I got home, my road wasn't even plowed, so.
I think we're getting into more discussion, and if it needs to be added to a future agenda, then we'll do that.
We could take it to policy committee.
The policy committee.
I would say if the
could also
policy committee could take a look at it, I would be happy. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Can I ask a question? Can you just clarify, are you saying that the teachers want to have the right to be able to leave if they feel, or are you asking Donna to amend the policy so, it's unclear what you're asking.
I'm asking that we look out for the safety and well-being of our teachers and employees first and foremost, and whichever way works best for the policy, I'd be happy with. That's what I am asking. I did not write the policy, and I'm not familiar with it. I just know that I received a lot of letters, some upset people, and
So I'm curious if the policy is that we close when the state closes, is that acceptable to you?
I'm not sure if it's a written policy, but it's past practice and it's procedure, so.
As a policy
So-
committee member, I'm
can let
not
the-
trying to be difficult, I'm just wondering, it's unclear to me what the ask is here.
I would like to do some research into that then, and then I will answer your question when I have more research.
Let's take it to the policy committee so that they can take a look at it, and then we'll go from there.
Did Donna
If
receive
you
any
have,
letters?
if you have any suggestions, send it to Donna for review at the policy committee.
Thank you.
You didn't receive any letters, did you?
I received a few emails,
No, you did.
4.
4.
Yeah, this is Jeremy. I'll just echo what Wendy just said. I received 3 myself, basically the same type of message, that they just felt trapped, that obviously there was a previously scheduled seminar workshop, but that they felt like they couldn't leave. And I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I don't consider myself to be a super cautious or worrisome driver. And when I went home at 1 o'clock yesterday, it was a mess on the roads. And I did not, or would not have wanted anybody to drive, whether it was a teacher, a student, a staff member, a friend, or a family member. It just wasn't safe. And so I would sort of echo what Wendy said. Some people might feel comfortable with that, and I think that's fine, but I don't think other people who are uncomfortable should be forced to do it. So maybe to your question, Melissa, it's my responsibility to better learn what the policy is. So I'd like to learn what that is, and then if it is insufficient,
Right.
once I've had a chance to do that.
So for
So
instance,
let's get it to the policy committee to review. Okay, and send your comments to Donna for review. Okay. I skipped right over citizens' comments. Are there any citizens who would like to say anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. Let's move into the budget workshop.
Okay, we did receive our ED 279 last week, as promised by DOE. We actually got it early. And our state subsidy is increased by $118,972 over FY18, so that's very good news. This increase includes $16,146 for our submission, along with RSU 2 Winthrop, of Part 1 of the regionalization proposal. We did develop, I met with Gary Rosenthal and Bill Zima from RSU 2, and we developed a proposal to combine efforts in extra and co-curricular offerings, in summer school and instructional support offerings, and in the training and availability of substitutes. So first, initially the proposal was denied. We went back and did some revisions based on their comments, and then we met with Richard Hassan, the Education Commissioner, and members of the Regionalization Committee, and our proposal was accepted. So we got that additional $16,146 in our ED 279. So now we have to work on Part 2 of the proposal, which is pretty in-depth. So we will be meeting to work with that and get that. So Gary, you're probably happy about that, right?
Yes.
In response to Gary's inquiry about providing instruction via computer on snow days, I asked Dianne to cost out approximately what it might cost to provide one-to-one computers for our K-5 students because they don't have computers. And the total cost would be $508,896 over 4 years, which means we would need to add approximately $127,224 to the FY19 budget. So just some information on that. Last week, LD 1710, the bill to reinstate the funding for the school-based health centers, was voted 8-4, ought to pass by the Health and Human Services Committee. We did send 4 students, and Becca went, and they testified, and I've heard, I think at every meeting I've gone to, I've heard how powerful the testimony of our students was at that hearing, so that's wonderful. And I think you might be going to hear that testimony at the meeting where Becca presents next time. The committee decided to support the funding for school-based health centers for this year and next with unallocated funds from the Fund for a Healthy Maine. If it passes the appropriation, it goes to the Appropriation Committee next. If it passes the Appropriation Committee, it goes to the full House and Senate, and both chambers have to pass it, and then it'll go to the governor. So it's got to go through a lot more processes before it passes. Please contact your legislators and urge them to support this bill. It means our funding for the health center. It's very, very important, and they are listening to us. So I know that I've written several letters, and we'll write some more. The money that we get, the funding that we get from the state represents about half the funding for the health center, so it's extremely important, and we need that money to keep our health center running. Right, Becca? So the first administrative report we have tonight is Rick Hogan, our middle school principal.
And I apologize for not being here last time. I had a 2-day, fortunately it wasn't the flu, but some type of virus, so I figured it was better I wasn't here that particular night. My budget request this year is fairly simple. I'm not asking for any new positions or anything like that. I would like to go over some of the increase in some of the lines so you understand where those increases are coming from. And the first place, on the course reimbursements, you'll see it's gone up 60%. What we do is I go through and do a quick tally among staff of who's going to be taking classes the following year. And that's based on that. So based on that survey that I took, it's been a 60% increase because people are taking more classes. It's part of their contract. They are allowed to do that. The district pays for that. We just try to get an estimate ahead of time so we know what we're trying to budget for. So that's the 60% there. And there's another 87.5% on the ed techs. We have the same policy for ed techs, and we do have a few more that are going back to school to take classes next year. So. If under English, there's a 133% increase on textbooks and periodicals. It's actually, those are actually seats for the program that we use called Reading Plus. It's part of our RTI program for intervention in literacy. And we're finding that's working very well in combination with the direct instruction that Kathy Farron, our RTI specialist, is providing. As a matter of fact, I ran the numbers today to look at how students are doing in those particular groups. And in looking at their NUIA scores from last winter to this winter, so the testing was just done in January, on average, those students in RTI have increased their RIT scores 9.8 points. The typical growth for the average student is somewhere around 6 to 7. And we're talking about students that typically have not had a lot of success and a lot of confidence with literacy. So over the last year, those students have averaged 9.8, and 83% of those students have met their projected growth total, which means that the program looks at how they're doing and projects where they should be. And 83% of those students are now either at that projected level or beyond. So I did add money in to try to expand that program a little bit. We'd like to expand it to RTI Tier 2 and have students that are still in the classroom but need to receive some support have seats with the Reading Plus program. So that's what the increase there would be for. And the same thing in math as well. Actually, before I get there, under phys ed, you'll see it says a 600% increase. Don Plord, our PE teacher, approached me and said he would like to start replacing some of the PE equipment. A lot of the pads and fitness equipment need to be replaced. If we were to do it all at once, that's what it would cost. So I just wanted to make that clear. We certainly can do it piecemeal, so if we need to back off on that, that is a possibility. And oops. You'll also see a similar increase to English under math. Again, we're using software called Dreambox. And it's for our RTI intervention, our Tier 3 right now. We'd like to add some more of that for our Tier 2 students as well. We've also been having good luck with it with our alternative ed programs, and even special ed is using it with some of their students. Similarly, I looked at the numbers for those students that were using RTI Tier 3 in math and using Dreambox. And for their recent NWAs, they average +9. Okay, again, the average for a student is 6 to 7, and we're talking about those students who really have not been successful in math, and in most cases haven't shown much improvement at all. And 68% of those students were able to meet their projected growth, so they're either at it or above. So we're seeing the combined class of having some technology involved, having the students work at their own pace with that, plus having the direct instruction from our RTI person, who in math is Janet Aspinall, really start to have some benefits. And this is the first year we've tried that blended model. So we're very happy about that, and we'd like to try to expand it if we could next year. And I believe, let me see. And the only other increase is actually on the furniture side. We currently have a science lab. We have one science lab in the building, but we don't have any science lab tables for that room. I believe I asked for $3,000 in the furniture budget to cover lab tables and also to get some more chairs for the classroom, as we're seeing an increase in the number of students, and we just need to get some more chairs so that we have some place for them to sit. And that's really the major pieces to my budget this year. Okay. Any questions?
Change some desk. That was high school?
Oh, it could be the sanding desk or something, the desk they have in the classroom.
When would we be, what would be the procedure to ask if we could introduce an industrial arts program into middle school?
Yeah.
So you would need to put in the budget a salary for the industrial arts teacher, and then get a figure of how much we would need for equipment and add that to the budget.
Adam?
Just on the whole, the Reading Plus program, that when we did our tour and we got to see what it was, that's awesome. And I'm fully in support of doing pilot programs like that and finding software that works. The middle school seems to have, I mean, you guys have the least number of interventionists, right, per student in the district, is that right? Because I just, in the past, we've been asked about adding interventionists more to the middle school.
We've got 2 interventionists, 1 math, 1 literacy, and we've got 1 RSU.
Yeah, I know a lot of it has to do with just the age of the students, but I think any time that we can incorporate software like that program, it looked like it made reading fun, so it just looked really cool, and I hope the board supports that.
Okay.
There's a note. There's a note on this Spotlight Schools about Tier 1 and 2 instruction in the middle school to support the RTI program. Is that in this budget?
That's not in the budget.
How much does this cost to accomplish?
If
what-
we do it right, it shouldn't. Tier 1 and Tier 2, Tier 1 is just general good practice in the classroom. Tier 1 is what affects all students in the building. So what they're saying in the NELM study that we got for the Spotlight School is that we need to start having more PD around what good practice can be used in math and literacy. It's been a while since the building's done that. So we took that to heart, and we're looking at how do we focus more on that for next year. It really shouldn't cost anything more. It's not like we need to bring specialists in or anything like that. It's looking at the literature and going over in as a group, as a staff, just deciding on what the good practice is and how we're going to proceed. Tier 2, again, is something that we should be able to handle with the literacy people we have in place and the math RTI people we have in place. Margot Georgi, who is our math RTI ed tech, was specifically brought on to start working with those Tier 2 kids. So she was in my budget last year, and she's moving towards pushing into the classroom and working with those Tier 2 kids. For literacy, we don't really need a literacy ed tech for that. We can work it with Kathy Farron so that she's working more closely with the teachers. And the teachers also, just through training, which again, we have the people in district to do this. We shouldn't have to pay anybody for it. what good Tier 2 looks like in the typical English reading, writing classroom. So that part really shouldn't impact the budget.
So the next thing that they put on this thing is due to a downward trend in math scores. I don't believe you had that downward trend.
Well, if you look, I don't think it was downward either. I would say looking at our MEA scores since the new standardized testing came into place, they've been, I'd say, flat. They've been the same for about 8 years. And that's what NELM saw when they saw it too, because they've seen us each of those 8 years. And that's something I've been talking about before they came in, that we need to relook at how we're doing math and how our instruction is. That's a matter of, again, looking at good practice, Tier 1 math practice in the classroom, and making sure that every classroom is making use of it.
So that should actually start at the elementary level, I would think. The type of students that you receive is the expectation is going to happen to you.
Well, it's interesting because I think if you look at the MEA scores at the elementary school, they're a little bit higher than when the kids get to the middle school. So I think what we have to do is take a look at what's happening in our building, because they seem to drop from 5th to 6th, and there's all sorts of reasons that could be. But if we're using strong Tier 1 practice in the classroom, it shouldn't make a difference. They should continue on that upward trend. So I'd say right now it's been flat.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions before Rick sits down? Okay,
No? Okay, thanks.
next.
Next is Dianne Mcgregor, our Director of Technology. Dianne is presenting the technology budget.
Good evening. Tonight I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I have for budget requests, but also talk a little bit about internet access in our district. There was a conversation at our previous meeting about, what do we have for internet access at home for families in our district. And while I don't have specific numbers for my elementary classroom families, I do have an idea of of approximate amounts. For instance, in Wayne, there's maybe 7 families that the secretary could think of, and this is anecdotal, like these are families that prefer to have their newsletters mailed or sent home rather than emailed, that sort of thing. When you ask about internet access, it's kind of interesting because lots of families, lots of parents have access through work and email through work. And when we surveyed in the spring, we have a survey that we give to all the students at the middle school and the high school, and they answer questions about internet access. And of the students that answered this survey, we had a really high percentage rate, yet we know that there are still kids that don't have internet access at home. And because we know this, what happens is they may have internet access when they're with their mom or when they're with their dad, or we've heard stories that it isn't very good, that they can't get the work done that they need with it. So when we did the survey last year, in our tech plan, I presented about this last year, that we have a pretty high percentage rate, but yet we still knew that kids didn't have access. So we purchased some Kajit mobile hotspots, and that's been a really great way for kids to get that internet access at home. And we purchased 5 for the middle school and 5 for the high school for this year. You can go to the next slide. And then what we did was we decided that we weren't going to say, okay, we're going to give it to specific students and they'll just have it all year, because they might not need it every night and it might preclude someone else from from taking one home. And so what we opened it up to everybody. If anybody needs a mobile hotspot, just simply go into the Learning Commons or the Media Center and sign it out. And what we found were, we do have some repeat kids coming in, but we also had parents saying, can my son or daughter sign it out because our internet is down right now and they need it, and so that's fine to do. And we also found that kids were doing homework groups, because you can have up to 5 people on a mobile hotspot, so they can take it out, and groups of kids could use it together. What I really liked about the mobile hotspot is that it is filtered, so there's really less distraction, no social media. That was another reason why parents were saying, go ahead and sign that out, because then you can focus on the work that you need to do. And it shuts off at 11 at night and turns back on at 6 in the morning. So, really fosters some, getting sleep, which is important. And it's just had a lot of use. What we did find, if you go to the next slide, is that our middle schoolers were using it more than our high schoolers. And so we thought about that. We're at our monthly tech meetings for middle school, high school. We were kind of looking at the data, and what we decided was that it's quite possible that our high school students are more mobile and can get to places where there's internet easier than a middle school kid. And so what we decided was we would take 2 of the high school to the middle school and give them more opportunity there, knowing that at any moment if the high school needed more, that we could just go across the parking lot, get one, and bring it over. And that does happen from time to time. We also found that we were able to use a mobile hotspot at the bus garage when we lost internet connectivity over there. And so Blenny was able to have connectivity. We've had staff members sign it out from time to time. And so it's really been a pretty exciting program for us. Based on the data, I'm not asking for any more mobile hotspots. I feel like we have a pretty good system going, and that they're being signed out, but not like we might have 1 or 2 extra from time to time, but we're not seeing that people are going without. So I felt like that was a great addition to our program. And basically, the cost of the mobile hotspots is about $1,000 for the 10 devices. You pay that once to buy the devices, and then it's $20 a month for each device for the connectivity. And that's, every year you'll pay that. And we do a 10-month program, so we don't pay for July and August. So.
None of them are in the elementary school.
Excuse me?
There's none in the elementary school.
There's none in the elementary school.
Are they insured? I mean, do you have some kind of insurance program?
It's a KG program, so how does it go? We can turn them completely off. We can ping them, of course. And I'll have to check on the replacement costs. There might be a replacement cost on that.
Is there kind of a program set in place similar to laptops when they break? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we didn't require like any, at first we thought maybe we would do a deposit down when kids were taking it out. And because we already have the laptop program going, we kept it simple, right? And they already have the insurance that's sort of on their laptop. We self-insure, so we would just use that to defer any costs, but we didn't want to put another burden or even another step in the process. Just let them have these let them use them. And we've heard from different teachers that it's made a difference for some kids, that they're actually getting their work done and they feel good about it. Another thing that we talked about when I was discussing this with our tech team, the mobile hotspots are great for helping kids get their work done, but we also offer lots of other ways to help kids. We brainstormed a list as a group. We have focus time at the high school, so that gives them another opportunity to get work done, ask for help, that sort of thing. We have tutorial at the middle school. We have study halls and silent study at the high school. We have advisors who are checking in with kids all the time and seeing if kids are falling behind. We have RTI interventions. We have extended time on some assignments that we have. We're using Google Classroom and resources on the web. And then the students have email and can connect to staff if they have questions. So it's not all about internet access. It's all about, getting kids what they need so that they can learn and be successful. Yeah. So my first request for this budget is a request that I had for last year as well, to have a K-5 integrator, which would split my K-8 integrator to a middle school position and an elementary school position. Right now, one person is serving 5 schools, and the elementary schools each get half a day a week, which means that if there's any kind of holiday, snow day, different kind of a day in the week, the middle school's time gets cut down because we always try to make it to the elementary schools. So even though the middle school has 3 days a week, it's very rare that they get a 3-day-a-week tech integrator in their schools. So, and it's just really difficult to meet with staff when you're just there half a day, and what if that teacher doesn't have a planning time, or maybe some of the specialists might not be at that school while Denise is there. Denise Churchill is also, I should introduce, she's our K-8 integrator right now. So the benefits of having a K-5 integrator, we have some middle school benefits. They would see increased time from 3 days or less than 3 days to 5 days a week, and allows for computer science instruction, team teaching, and lesson modeling, increased student interaction. You can do more parent outreach and support, and there's a lot of data management that's going on right now with our staff, and it's critical to support the staff as they're doing all of these common assessments and Google Docs and jump rope and Power School. I mean, there's just a lot to manage. And so having someone that is around more for that management would be a great benefit. And for our elementary schools, so if you look at my proposal, it's really a 40%, it's not a 40%, what is it? 80%. 4 days a week. 4 days a week, 80% position. And one of the things that we do for Fayette is that we help manage their technology. So we help update their equipment, do some tech support with them, but we haven't been able to do tech integration with them because we just can't add another school to that person. And so I've been working with Fayette, and in their budget, they have a 20% person so that we can make a full-time position, which is much easier to hire for. And in fact, Fayette had the 20% position in last year where we cut our 80%, they were able to get theirs through, and they could not hire a person for 20%, a certified teacher. And so they had to put in an ed tech right now, which is fine, but really to have the kind of person that we're looking for, to have a certified teacher who really knows teaching and learning is the best for that position. So that's another way that we coordinate with other districts is technology with Fayette, and so we're hoping that to create a full-time position, which would be helpful. And then each school would have a day a week, which, you know, can be a little bit flexible, but also could be really great to say, okay, Tuesdays, I'm going to be at Wayne, and the staff knows that I'm at Wayne on Tuesdays, and then all of a sudden, it becomes an easier way to work with staff. And so each school, elementary school, would get a day of time for them. Let's see, what else? We talked about, you know, we could do some family tech nights with different schools. That was very popular this year. More data management for staff. And just, you know, maybe even establishing a tech team for our elementary kids. Kids love to be a part of things like that, and it would be really helpful for our staff to actually have trained kids around too. We definitely lean on our kids at the middle school and high school, and I believe that elementary schools students have a part to play as well. My second request is really about network equipment, and so what I'm asking for are 5 firewalls that are going to increase the network security at each of our schools. So 4 at the elementary schools and then 1 for this campus. I can do 1 for the middle school and high school. I also need a layer 3 switch and a Cisco 400 controller. And so that allows us to keep our networks up to date. With our network equipment, there's a program that's called E-Rate, and it's a federal program. And what that does is it has a reimbursement rate. So I can apply, and I have already started that process of applying to get 60% reimbursed for that network equipment. So it really brings the cost down. There's a lot of paperwork that's involved with that, but it's definitely worth it. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
The integrator for the elementary schools, where is it falling through the cracks now? Where is a teacher calling you from the elementary school and saying, I have a piece of equipment that I can't use in my classroom?
Okay. So what we have for tech support is an email that teachers emails tech support, and it all goes into one email place where my whole team can see it. And so they might have to wait till Denise is at the school again. We definitely triage. Like if a teacher's computer goes down, we're there, we're helping. But if they can't print to the colored printer, they might have to wait until we can get somebody there.
It would be, just on that position, it would be awesome if there was, I guess, more from the teachers as far as saying, I can't do this because the IT people just don't have enough time.
So Denise did pull together some ideas, and please, Denise, jump in if you'd like.
And I guess, sorry,
Yes, go ahead.
will it solve it? Because you're saying it's a half a day per week right now.
Right. So
And you're
we'll
going
go
to a full day per week.
Right.
It's still one person doing 5
Exactly,
schools.
it is.
It's just one of them is Fayette.
Right.
So I guess,
It's more time is what I'm figuring, right?
yeah, it's another half a day. The middle school is going to reap. They're going to have someone 5 days a week.
Yeah.
That's going to be where the person's plugging in, right?
So what you're asking for is support from teachers or?
No, I'm just saying, I see the benefit at middle school.
Something from teachers at the elementary school saying that they could really use this position?
Yeah, or just a matter of, I'm not sure, elementary-wise, I see the benefit. Definitely middle school. I mean, they're going from a person for how many days a week?
3.
3 to 5?
5, yeah.
So,
I guess, Adam, one of the things that I think about is, this position has been cut. I tried last year to put it through, and I'm very fiscally responsible when I'm looking at my budget, when I'm trying to get donations for equipment, all of that. So would I like more? Absolutely. But I also know that we have budget constraints, and I'd rather ask for something that I think I can get, truly.
I guess if there's technology in the district that the teachers can't use because there's not an integrator there helping them, that would be a red flag for me.
Well, we have smart boards that are going up, and teachers need help with that. I know that they're not getting all that they could get out of those, although Denise does work with them. So that's,
I guess that's all I'm asking, is
Yes.
that would be helpful.
Yes.
If there is some feedback we can get from staff, and I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
But if there's some feedback we could get from staff saying, I would love to do this, but the IT people are taxed, that would be great.
So you could get us some feedback from staff?
Absolutely.
Yep,
Yep,
okay.
absolutely.
Missy?
I was just going to say, Diane, is there some data that you track that, like at my office, when our IT person gets a call, it's completely logged in? Is there a way for you to sort of make it so it's just elementary schools? And then
Actually, I do have that. My tech teams, when we meet with them, I have all the data for each of the schools, and I have it broken out by month. And we look at, how many requests we've gotten and how many are still outstanding. And
does it reflect like lag time in terms of, like, I think Adam, when Adam's talking, the call comes in on a Tuesday and you can't get till Thursday?
No, I don't have that.
But you have a record of requests from teachers at the elementary level specifically?
Yes, and we've done a lot of training with teachers that they use tech support so that I can track and so that I can, but there's still a lot that happen when Denise walks through the door.
Right.
And so, I don't have that kind of data as far as, every single thing that's happened, but yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Alex?
When it comes to the firewall, has there been any breaches of our firewall?
We use the firewall that's with MSLN right now. So by purchasing our own firewall, we'll have greater control over it and be able to network the buildings more. So it's definitely an improvement to what we have right now.
But we haven't had any breaches in their network? No? Okay.
Any other questions? Do you have more?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you.
Next is Ryan Meserve with the special education budget.
Okay, good evening, everyone. For our 2018-19 special education budget overview, I just want to kind of review what we have in place right now in our schools. So in RSU 38, we have a wide variety of special education programs and supports. We have speech and language pathologists, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a board-certified behavior analyst, a licensed clinical social worker, a school psychologist, special educators at every building, and a number of educational technicians who are all part of the network of support for students in RSU 38. And you'll notice in this year's budget, I've been in contact with Child Development Services to plan for incoming kindergarten students. I've also spent a considerable amount of time reviewing students graduating, building-to-building transition projections, and based on the various and increased student needs, I'm requesting 2 additional educational technicians to support students who require direct adult support due to behavioral, medical, and/or academic needs. You'll also note that in addition to that budget request, I'm also requesting an increase in school nurse time at 2 of our elementary schools in order to appropriately meet the medical needs of some incoming students. Another addition you'll see spread across the district budget lines is an increase in the instructional supply line. This fall, our 3-year contract for a supplemental reading program that's computerized Lexia is due, and that requires for us to pay for the continued use for the next 3 years. We also subscribe to what Rick Hogan was talking about as well. We pay a portion of the Dreambox subscription, and that's included in those figures as well. Over the past few years, we've been fortunate within the special education budget to have similar staffing levels based on student graduations, transitions from school to school, and incoming students from CDS. However, given the needs of the incoming students, as well as an increase in the number of students transferring into our district, I'm asking for this increased funding. As I mentioned in a previous board report earlier in the fall, we had almost 30 new students this fall move in who required special education services. Many times we're able to absorb those impacts by the number of students moving in versus the number of students moving out, equals itself out. This year we had about 7 students move out, and the students that moved in required more supports than the ones that moved out. And that is kind of the nature of what happens sometimes in special education. As many of you know, students who require special education services and supports are entitled to those programs as outlined in their individualized education programs, or IEPs. We as a school district must find, evaluate, and identify those students who meet special education criteria, but we also must serve any students who move into the district at any point in the year. You can imagine projecting those who may move in or out is not easy to do, and if a family moves in to one of our communities, we must meet as an IEP team to see how we can meet their needs. In some cases, that may require us to allocate additional resources or to shift existing resources. We're very fortunate in RSU 38 to have an extremely supportive group of educators, parents, students, and community members that allow us to continue to provide these high-quality special education programming and supports for students in our 4 towns. It truly is a team effort, and I want to thank everyone for their continued support of special education programming throughout RSU 38. If you have any questions, I'd like to answer them at this point.
I have one question.
Sure.
Did we increase school nursing at one of the elementary schools last year?
We did, yes.
Okay. And now we need 1.6 additional?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So how much funds are we going to get back from the state on that?
I'm not 100% sure how that will work out in the funding formula in terms of what we spend and what they would allocate for those positions. But I do know that, I'm making these projections.
Can you do that?
What's that?
Can you work out that?
How much we'll get back in the formula? Well, I don't know, Bridget, can we?
The special ed formula is much more complicated than what the regular formula is. On my ED 279, which tells us how much money we're going to get, the special ed line is one line in that formula. Behind that formula, behind that one line, is 6 additional spreadsheets. And some of that information is confidential, and it's all based on student needs and identifications, and it's very complicated. And I could probably try to contact somebody at the state, but I can't guarantee that we could get a projection going forward.
But we should be filing for the money.
Oh, it will be. I mean, we will be, but it just will be in the next year's subsidy. It won't be in this year's subsidy. It will fall into the next year's subsidy.
And I'll just put out there too, and Bridget and I have talked about this, but there are some things, we could have 40 students move in, and there's something within the formula that we're only allowed to go up a certain percent in what we receive back, even though the cost for those special ed services and programs may be higher than what we would get back in state funding. They set a cap at how much you can go out in the current formula or how much you can receive. So sometimes if more students are identified or more students move in, that makes it problematic to know how much you would actually get back. And then, I know there's some talk about really trying to account for those high cost in-district students, which is what we're talking about in these cases. So these are students with complex needs that require a lot of support, and we're left with, figuring out how to service those students within, their home schools. That's our end goal for everything, is to try to provide the least restrictive environment, and that a lot of times takes a lot of resources and then support from, the community and then the schools especially.
Does the state determine in a formula how many special ed students we're supposed to have?
No, I mean,
No.
that's there's numbers for, what the federal rate is and what the state rate is, but, those are supposed to be individualized. You could have, a community that has a high prevalence rate for a certain identification category, and that could be outside of your control, and you wouldn't limit that. Actually, there's ongoing court rulings right now in Texas where that's a problem, where they tried to set arbitrary limits just for the sake of funding, and that goes completely against the Individuals with Disabilities Act.
Yeah.
I can tell you, in the formula, I think it's the first 15% of special ed students we get a certain percentage for. Above that, we get a lesser percentage for. So there is a differentiation in the formula for how much, depending on the number of students that you have based on your population.
When I look at this budget, I notice that it's a 132% increase on Mount Vernon. So all the cost is going associated with Mount Vernon?
No, and some of that too, and Bridget can correct me if I'm wrong, but some of that is shifting. I think one of the new positions we did allocate towards Mount Vernon and some of the nursing time, but some of that is shifting, where things are currently and they weren't last year. So, like I said, some of those students who moved in, I may have projected that I had staffing needs at Wayne, and it shifted that those kids went to Mount Vernon, and I shifted staff accordingly to that. So I always consider some of those ed tech supports that we have in there, they're district needs, and they follow where the students are. So some of those students in this budget, what you might see in those shifts is that some of those students might be going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and the staff that may be with them, or some of those supports, they would be allocated up to the middle school line rather than stay at one of the elementary schools.
Okay. Alex?
Gary kind of took my question, but mine would be for Manchester. Is it similar?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is just, again, projecting where I think the needs will be. It's really kind of, in a lot of ways, there are some certainties, but there's also, trying to best project where those would be. And even the conversations with Child Development Services, I mean, I'll update you as we go along, but we don't have those transition meetings, and those are formal binding IEP meetings till April. April 26th, I think, is when they're scheduled, and they're supposed to actually be scheduled between April and June, but I always try to schedule them early when I meet with them, and we start meeting and talking in November, but they could have 10 new kids come in who are identified, or they could have 10 kids leave who are identified. So it's really kind of it's a hard moving target. And again, those fall numbers, that's the biggest shift that I've seen. That was a large number to absorb. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're lucky they didn't move into one school. Class sizes would have been, an issue in that case, but.
Bridget?
Okay, so the two schools that were asked about are Manchester and Mount Vernon, but if you notice, the next 4 schools underneath of that all have negative numbers. And so that's showing that the shift is coming out of one school and going into another school.
Adam?
With the school nurses, elementary school nurses, we have, what, two? Two in the elementary school. Well, this.
2 plus.
2 plus. And so the way that one of these would work out, and I think the way it's distributed in the budget is, for one of them, and again, this best projections on how we can try to service the students without getting into details. Sometimes, we try, and we're fortunate to have health center supports and services at the middle school and high school. If you have a building nurse on staff and you can run health plans that come from medical providers and teams in a way that allows you to pull from existing resources, then we try to do that first. I mean, we're required to look at that. In other cases where you have nurses spread out, a quarter of a day here, a half day there, and you need not someone with the student all the time, but you need, contact availability to a nurse in case there's a medical situation. That's how we kind of structured that position. So, again, it's really trying to look at each individual need of the student without, and then, trying to build those into what could be natural systems of support within the school.
Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next budget is the ELL, English Language Learners. Unlike a lot of districts in our area, our English language learner population has decreased. So right now we have a person working 80%, and we have decreased that for next year in this budget down to 60%. We feel that we can adequately cover the needs of the students, of course, unless more move in, and then again we'll have to deal with that. It's sort of like the special ed population. We never know from day to day who's going to enroll, and we certainly have to meet the needs of those students. So you'll see a decrease in the budget, and that is because we have decreased that position by 20%.
Okay. Questions? All right, next.
Gifted and Talented, and that's Nancy Harriman, wears the hat of our District and Talented Coordinator for the district.
Good evening. I feel really short. I'm looking at you through the microphone. Oh, well. Is it working? Thank you. It's like open mic night, but somebody else usually fixes it. Thank you. Okay. So Gifted and Talented, we were able to do a staff presentation for you in December, so I can be very brief. We're still serving about the same number of students that we were then. And we explained to you that we're limited to about 10% of the population, so it's around 120 students. And about 68 of those students are receiving supports for academic areas. They're identified for gifted or talented areas in academics. And another 51 are being served through visual and performing arts. And we have a handful of students who receive support in both. And also, as we mentioned in our board presentation in December, the number of students we have served is fairly constant over the last few years, but there has been a shift over time by level. That is, we have more students now at the middle school and high school who we're serving by far than we do at the elementary school, and that was not always true. So we're not requesting any changes in staffing, but also, as we explained in December, we already have shifted where some of the staff are working or where they're spending the most time, because that's where the students are. So for next year, we would once again have a teacher who's 0.7, and that teacher is working at 3 of the elementary schools. We have a teacher who's half-time, and she works half-time or part-time in the 4th elementary school, the smallest one, and also works at the at the middle school. And then we have one full-time teacher, and she works half-time middle school, half-time high school. So probably the needs next year will be very similar as far as where those staff are working, but we're not asking for any additional staff. The increases that you see are all in relation to staffing due to negotiated increases in salaries and benefits. But the staff would stay the same and the program would stay the same. And then last, I did want to just mention a couple of examples of program successes this year. And the first one is in serving our visual and performing arts students and our very talented music and art teachers managed to weave this in to their days along with their other teaching loads. But at the high school, one of the art teachers, Jeremy Smith, he arranged for a residency with an artist, Jude Vale, and she came on 2 different dates and did lithography with the students. And we managed to put this together, working with him by combining professional development for staff. The other art teachers got to come and observe her do this process where they made watercolor and acrylic monoprints over pastel drawings. And so the faculty got to come and learn how to do that. She worked with honors art students in a class, and then she met with the GT art students during focus time. So in 2 half-day workshops, we accomplished a lot by combining funding, but it was very successful and something that we would like to be able, that kind of thing, to do again. And then the second example is something that in the area for the students who are identified for academics. And this year, Pat Godin, who's the full-time person for high school and middle school, is working very closely with the English department, and they have figured out how to do some curriculum compacting so that students identified for gifted and talented or high-achieving students can meet the high school standards early, so that that will allow them to take more electives or early college courses in grade 11 and 12 at the high school. And I like these 2 examples because I think they both show how we try to serve our high-achieving students who might be identified in the talent pool, as well as those students who are actually selected in that top 5% for gifted and talented.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes.
Gary? One question, and then I'll open it to
Well,
another
go right
person,
ahead.
too.
So, this is my deal, is that we talk about gifted and talent. We have people in this world that are going to go out and need to use their hands and do sewing, whatever it is in life. And they should be looked at also. And we never talk about those people. That's my contention.
I'm not sure that Nancy
That does go
can...
into it because she is the head of this whole curriculum.
Well, I think that
We'll get to that another time.
I have 2 answers, actually. One is that in terms of the visual and performing arts, I want to make sure that you know that our industrial arts teacher is a member of that department at the high school. So a lot of these discussions and bringing in artists and residents and things, this year they actually, one of the art teachers and the IA teacher team taught a metals class. They didn't team teach one class. They had 2 classes concurrently going in the IA area at the same time, but to share the expertise of metals and how they're used in art as well as in other kinds of production. But it was very successful. So I hope that we'll see more opportunities maybe, Gary, for students to come through that route. And the other thing is that we are obligated to follow the state criteria, but there is this opportunity to make sure that we're also identifying students who might not be as high achieving or meeting all the traditional criteria because of other kinds of educational disadvantage or situations. So we try to make sure every year when we do the selection process with a big committee, we try to make sure that we have a mix of students in there, and that we make sure those students also get reviewed and that we're identifying. And sometimes those are students who might be very good at doing things or science investigations, but not so much high achievers when it comes to reading and writing about it or whatever. So that is another way we're trying to serve across the board. But I agree with you. It'd be nice if there was more recognition in the state criteria for students in manual arts and other kinds of areas.
It sounds like the request tonight for more information has been for industrial arts in the middle school and life skills for all students. And I'd like to hold that discussion until after Nancy is done, talking about gifted and talented.
What's up? Thank you.
Okay, board questions, and this is where you might ask more, to get more information about life skills and IA. Or do we just want more information on those? Or is it a full board concern? Alex, your finger's on the button.
So do we have to ask Rick or Donna to look into adding an industrial department in the middle school? Like formally? Like make a motion?
To investigate, you wouldn't have to, it would not have to be a vote.
Okay.
Alex, what kinds of information are you interested in?
Just setting up an IA department in the middle school.
Once we have that information, if we wanted to add a course, then the board has to approve that course.
What is industrial arts?
What is industrial arts? Good
'Cause
question.
It seems pointless to send Donna on
Because
a goose chase if we don't give her some guidance.
Yeah.
If she's going to bring back 50 options, that seems like too much. So maybe we
IA
ought to
has-
better define it.
IA has changed a lot since I was in high school, so, good
Well,
question.
There's the industrial arts, the traditional industrial arts, like the woodworking and the home ec and things like that. A lot of schools have gone to more the robotics and that type of thing. So if you can give us an idea of what direction you're going in. Thank you, Jeremy.
I would like to make it as collaborative with what Mr. Stockford does in the high school as possible. So in the realm of what we're doing already.
David?
I think that's a good move, and the idea of considering it is important. To me, part of our consideration as a whole needs to be just as it has evolved from when we were in school, does it need to evolve more within our schools now to meet the upcoming needs of our students, especially in that case, the students that are leaning in those directions? Thank you, that's all.
And to do that, we need more information. Yeah. Any other questions about the middle school request, technology, special education, ELL, gifted and talented presentations? Adam?
Still have a quick question on the nurses. What does that look like? Can you just give me an idea what that looks like? We have 2 already. We'd be adding 1.5.
Those nurses would be, and Ryan, you might want to jump in here, but they would be to address the special medical needs of some incoming students.
Yeah, I'm just curious, I mean, because it says it does 200 to 300 students. It serves 200 to 300 students. Sorry. So I'm just curious, they would just be a regular school nurse, but have
No,
focus?
actually, one of them, kind of like I mentioned before, the plan would be to allocate or shift the nursing around a little bit, so there was more time, actual contact time with nurses in the elementary schools. So right now, those elementary schools, and I don't know the schedules exactly, because they always seem to change, but, you know, rather than one building might have a full-time nurse who would be a building nurse, and part of that would be paid out of the special education budget. Another one may have a nurse that's actually with a student. So without getting into student-specific information, sometimes the medical needs are severe enough that you actually need to allocate something beyond traditional support staff to be able to meet those medical needs so that students can access their education. Other times, we'd look to make sure that we have the proper coverage in the building in case there was a medical need that came up. And currently in Mount Vernon, how often is the nurse there? Do you know that?
Typically like 3 half days.
Yeah. So in the case that we would need someone there all the time, we'd have to shift it so that in particular a building would have someone there when the student would need someone, and that would shift the needs to other buildings as well. And in this, the way that we proposed it now, it's not to take away time from what's currently there, because I think everyone can probably realize that, nurse needs fluctuate depending on the sickness that's going on, and, they're always needed in some way, so we wouldn't want to take away current resources, which is why I proposed it within my budget to cover potential needs coming in for next year. If that answers your question, Adam.
So we might have some students, and this is really hard to talk about, confidentiality-wise. So some students might come in, and they might need a nurse with them all the time. Some students might come in, and they just might need a nurse in the building all the time, and that nurse could cover other students as well, but would be there. In our like the schedule?
You mean?
Yeah.
Right now, we're at what, the nurses at elementary school half the time?
Yeah, they try to make enough contact points so that it's meaningful for the students that they need to serve. So I would try to equate it the easiest way for someone who's in the building, like Vicki Gabriel, who's in the middle school. She's in the middle school all the time. There's always a nurse in the building, in the health center, and that meets a majority, more than a majority of the students' needs, even the ones who have some complex medical needs, but there's someone always there. So if there was an incoming student who had nursing needs and they needed a nurse in the building all the time for any sort of acute or medical needs that came up, then the middle school already has that built in. So what we're talking about is trying to allocate that at one of our elementary schools who doesn't currently have that at this time. Does that help a little bit, or? Basically, we're adding so that someone would be in the building at one of our elementary schools, a nurse would be in the building all the time at the one where the student would need it. That's one of the proposals that I put in there, is to increase school nursing as a whole across the 4 elementary schools in order so that it doesn't take away from the current staffing levels at any of the other ones, but then one building where it's necessary, there's a nurse there all the time, similar to the model that we have at the middle school.
I guess my question was, how close does that bring us to being full-time in elementary school?
It increases at 60% now, I think is what we put into the budget, so.
2 nurses.
Yeah.
You're not going to do simple math, right? We need her. So 2 nurses in 4 schools, so they kind of are, as you can figure out, like 50% in the schools.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little more depending on the needs. And so this would bump it up, so it'd be another 60%, so 160%. I was really good at math.
Yeah. It's adding,
Basically, you're saying is one of the elementary schools will have a similar model as the middle school, and that there'll be a nurse there full-time.
Yep.
And it wouldn't affect or impact the level of nursing currently happening at the other elementary schools.
And going forward, hypothetically, if the board was to fund a full-time nurse at the elementary school, does that make your job easier in some way, as far as that position's already built in middle school?
Sure, I mean, that would be an additional 1.4 nursing positions to the budget. If we were to look at it that way, that would bring us up to 4 total from the 2.6 that we have right now. Certainly it's easier to have staff already in positions, but I'm not sure that it's tough again to project. I mean, not every building is going to need a nurse, and that's a great resource to have, but that may not be the the actual resource needed at the time. I can think of, certain schools, you can have a small school that needs it, and you can have a large school that doesn't need it. And I think, trying to.
Just oddball question.
Sure.
With guidance, the guidance counselors that we have in the schools, is any special education funding ever used for them?
No, that would be,
That's a different thing.
yep, but like any student, they would have access to those, and you would want to try to use those supports first, because that would go on that continuum of trying to use existing resources before adding additional resources, which is something that, we work pretty hard to try to do. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions about any of the budget? Alex?
My question was for the technology budget. I'm not sure, did you go over why there's a 69.4% increase for the middle school? I mean, it's the highest percentage increase out of all of them.
Is that because the tech integrator would be full-time instead of half-time at the middle school?
Okay. Yes. I'm good. There we go.
Any other questions? Any?
Should we make sure there's enough money in the heating budget in the middle
I
school?
know, it's cold.
God, it's cold in here.
Either that or provide us with fur-lined blankets for these meetings. Yeah. Any citizens, any comments?
Can we get past them?
Okay.
Nope.
I don't
Brian,
think.
can you check and see if anybody signed up, please?
Okay.
So we have one more item?
We have informational items. Any questions about any of the principal, adult ed, finance, health director, special ed, curriculum superintendent, school staff association reports?
Yes.
Okay?
So I received the general purpose aid, and we're at 8.42 mill rate. And we get an adjusted 3,500? That's what it says?
3 million.
What is it?
For Wayne?
No.
RSU 38.
RSU 38?
We don't have that.
Okay.
Is that the same as last year?
No. The expected mill rate is going from 8.19. Okay, you're looking at a blended rate, that's why. Yeah, that's a blended rate. So the expected mill rate is going from
Sorry about that. The expected mill rate is going from 8.19 in the current year to 8.51 for next year, is what is proposed right now. But again, Wayne has that little quirky thing, the little quirky thing.
Yeah, we got to wait.
Wayne's different.
Wayne's different. So Wayne only has to have, instead of 8.51, they only have to have an 8.04. So when you blend them is what you're coming up with there.
So
Wayne,
that gives you the 8.42.
yes.
So all we're going to get from the state this coming year is 3.5 million.
Well, it goes through a really long formula, Gary.
But they show you the amount.
Right, yes, we do have an amount. Again, that's projected, that's not voted on yet.
Oh, that's not voted on yet?
No.
Sean hasn't got this done for us?
And I do want to point out that in the current year, the state share is 29.81% of our EPS grand total allotment, and in the proposal, it's 29.41, so it's going down slightly what the state is covering of the EPS formula.
Any questions for principals, adult ed, finance, health center, special ed, curriculum, superintendent, staff association. Okay, then there are meetings that you see for other committees. I'd just like to say for the superintendent search, you have minutes of our last meeting in your folders. There's a timeline in there that shows how we're moving along. We do have a committee, a full committee of 15 members now, equally divided among the various towns and including community members, parents, teachers, administrators, board members. I'm not sure if I left off anyone, but people are represented. March 8th, our next meeting will be a workshop with MSMA. March 15th, we'll be reviewing the results of the Survey Monkey that's out now. So please push that. If you see it on Facebook or any other places, share it so that everyone can see it, all of your friends can see it. They should be placed now in the town offices and not the dump, the recycling. Transfer station. Just let everyone know that you can, who are citizens in our 4 towns, to fill out the Survey Monkey. We'll be reviewing applications the week of March 15th through the 21st so that we can decide on March 22nd, decide on the first round of applicants to interview, and we'll be looking, never mind. I was going to say something, but it was wrong. And then April 3rd and 5th, we'll be doing interviews during the daytime. April 10th, please keep this in mind, around April 10th or the 12th, we'll be doing full board interviews of however many candidates we want to bring forward. And then after that, we'll be doing site reviews and the rest. Yes, Alex?
I do have a question, or actually a clarification from Donna. Is that okay? Donna Wolfram.
Okay.
It is the sole discretion for you to decide if we have a school day or not. Is that correct?
Yes, if you would like me to call you at 4:30, I'd be happy.
No. No. But my question is that you would also declare if we have a half-day, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this workshop that teachers were very concerned about in the email, that could have been canceled as well and moved to a later date? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have this, can you make the decision if a teacher can leave early or not?
Can leave early?
Yeah, I had a teacher that had a kind of a discussion about that they live a little bit more than an hour and a half away. And they asked to leave at 11:30 when all the other students did, and...
Alex, I think this is a discussion that needs to happen face-to-face with Donna instead of with the full board, because we're getting into more sensitive issues.
Well, I can just tell you that I was not aware of that, so nobody came to me and asked me that question, so.
Okay. But can we postpone this discussion until next meeting? After the policy committee reviews it?
The policy review will,
It's not on the agenda for this next one.
Right.
We have a pretty full agenda. We could discuss it, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Donna, you put a memo out that the policy is a big packet, and you're going to print it. If I stop by Monday, I can pick it up?
I'm not in tomorrow, so as long as you give me a little bit of time on Monday morning.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to come on Tuesday and not be prepared, and we waste our time.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor? Thank you.